This January 6th committee keeps issuing a lot of subpoenas for phone call records, for texts, for documents, and of course for depositions, for all these people who worked at the White House. All these people who worked at the White House. And of course, Nancy Pelosi decided up front who could serve on this committee. And she picked these two reprobates for the Republicans. She picked the Republicans to sit on the committee, Kinzinger and Cheney. Whereas Kevin McCarthy had picked others and she refused to have them seated. Just think about this. But she's a totalitarian. She is everything I've said she's always been. So now they've spewed out more subpoenas, Stephen Miller, Kayleigh McEnany, even a few junior staffers in and around the Oval Office. So they're going to bankrupt these people, many of them, because it's the cost of a good criminal defense lawyer is a fortune, a fortune. But let's take a look. Go ahead.
New targets to help uncover
who. Now you see what happens here. Every time CNN and the others run a story about this, they show these clips, they loop them, of this sort of stuff that's going on here. They never break out from this. There's almost 700 people who've been charged, almost 700 people who've been charged. The vast majority of them never went in the building. A certain percentage of them went into the building after police officers waved them into the building. Some of them have been being charged for violent acts, and they should be. People who are breaking into the Capitol building or people who are attacking police officers, they should be charged like anybody else. You know, like Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Now that said, a lot of people have been charged with Mickey Mouse charges like trespassing on the Capitol lawn or parading in public on the Capitol lawn. And they've been threatened with felony trials if they don't accept these federal misdemeanors, which they have to wear on their jackets for the rest of their lives. So they show this over and over again, this aspect here. And there's been more and more discussion about FBI, not just informants, but FBI participants. As an example, look at your monitor here. See the guy on the far right wearing the neon orange cap? You see that? I talked to Julie Kelly the other day on my radio show. She writes for American Greatness. She's the one who deserves a Pulitzer. Every single Pulitzer handed out as a result of coverage on the Russia collusion matter should be returned, but of course they won't be. There are dozens of men who were wearing that neon orange cap, and they were said to be with the Proud Boys. The problem is the Proud Boys put out the word, as she wrote, to dress in clothing that is indistinguishable from what other people would be dressed in. So these orange hats are weird. And then the vast majority of people who were wearing these orange caps have never been charged. We don't even know their names. Now, we know that the FBI was involved in the so-called Governor Whitmer kidnapping in Michigan. The FBI was in fact leading the charge. They had 13 FBI agents, undercover agents involved in that. And the idea first came out of the FBI. And so they ensnared all these people to get involved in this. And those cases are now proceeding. And the head FBI agent who was involved, the head FBI agent, has since been charged with domestic abuse and has basically had to leave his position, at least for now. Go ahead.
I'm the insurrection, narrowing in on those closest to the former president, Donald Trump. The committee dropping more subpoenas today, 10 new ones, including key players in the Trump orbit in the time between the November election and January 6th. The biggest names, longtime loyal advisor Stephen Miller.
Now stop. They have 1 million photos of Stephen Miller. See the photo they choose? With his mouth wide open. The media and their propaganda activities are just unbelievable. And this committee can try and subpoena whomever they want. Why don't they discuss why these people have been subpoenaed? They've been subpoenaed because they're in the Trump orbit. They don't have any predicate for the vast majority of this. None. They're just throwing lassos out there as fast as they can, as many as they can, and grabbing as many as they can. And They want to look at texts and emails and try and embarrass people if they can, and so forth and so on. There's no criminal activity here because the Department of Justice is responsible for that, not this rogue Stalinist committee that Pelosi set up. Go.
Body man turned White House Personnel Chief Johnny McEntee and former Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. McEnany, one of the loudest voices in Trump's inner circle, peddling the big lie about the election results, both in and outside the...
Wow, isn't that fantastic? Here we have ABC News that peddled the Russia collusion thing for years. Now they're talking about Kayleigh, who is a wonderful, decent human being. Just a very lovely person, she and her husband. Peddling lies about the campaign. Which lies? Which lies? Did the Pennsylvania Supreme Court do what I said it did or not? Yes, it did. Did the governor of Pennsylvania do what I said he did or not? Yes, he did. Did the Secretary of State, since resigned in disgrace, did she do what I said she did or not? She did. So that's not peddling lies. The fact that a section of the United States Constitution was violated by Democrat state actors. I don't know what else they're talking about. They're not very specific, but apparently any objection to anything that took place during that election, of course, is peddling lies and triggering an insurrection. When the Democrats do this and worse, that's okay. Go.
The integrity of our election matters. The Constitution of the United States matters. What we have seen across the country is Democrat officials systematically trying to do an end run around the Constitution to tip the scales of the election in their favor.
That was true. That was true. She's not even talking about machines. She's not talking about ballots. She's not talking about this. She's talking about how they changed their statutes and regulations in violation of the federal Constitution. Now we know about Zuckerberg and over $400 million that he poured into this to bring out the Democrat Party vote, mostly in the inner cities. We've learned a hell of a lot since then. But ABC News, which was part of the mob, the media mob that pushed this Russia collusion agenda, that covered up the Hunter Biden scandal and all the rest of it, now they're very concerned. You know, the people question what took place in the last election. Go.
The committee's requests Tuesday come one day after they issued a batch of subpoenas to other high-ranking Trump officials like former campaign manager Bill Stepien and spokesman Jason Miller. The committee also wants to hear from John Eastman, the conservative lawyer who authored the memo outlining fringe legal theories about former Vice President Mike Pence's authority to overturn election results.
So what? So what if he issued whatever theory he issued? What does that have to do? What does that have to do with the violence? What does that have to do with oversight? I mean, you want to talk about lawyers with fringe theories? We've got one right now, that OSHA has the power to issue mandates nationwide to companies. That's a fringe theory. Boy, that's a fringe theory. Or that the CDC has the authority to control landlord-tenant issues and can freeze rental payments. The Supreme Court said no, and they went forward with it anyway. Boy, that's a really crackpot theory. Go ahead.
As part of a pressure campaign.
We know there was fraud, traditional fraud that occurred. We know that dead people voted.
And former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik. All four of them, Stepien, Miller, Eastman, and Kerik, among those gathered at...
Now, they mention their names and they show the rushing of the fence to try and tie them together when one has nothing to do with the other. Nothing whatsoever. Go ahead.
Hotel for what is described as a war room to overturn the election. Kerik already warning that he does not plan to comply. I will not be threatened, intimidated, forced into bankruptcy, or silenced at the hands of this committee who are not looking for truth, but targeting patriots and members of the president's legal team that wanted nothing more to investigate and expose those irregularities.
Very well
Kerik
said.
Said in a statement. His confrontational tone, an example of the difficult time the committee is having.
Now look who's on this committee. Adam Schiff, who lied about that Russia collusion from day one. Every one of these Democrats, Raskin on the right of Kinzinger, lied about Russia collusion over and over again. They have every left-wing moron and hack you can possibly think of here.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.